So like and subscribe if you want to. If not, that's fine. We have our first trade rumor for an offseason that is probably going to get really crazy, and it's going to happen pretty quickly too. The Suns have talked to the Thunder about Chris Paul. The name that you immediately think of that would be moving would be Kelly Oubre, maybe Ricky Rubio as well. It would depend on what OKC would want. The reasoning to do this if you're Phoenix, it's you get a guy who is pretty old, yeah, but is still very good, and maybe Chris Paul, in their eyes, is the difference between them being a contender for the 8th seed and maybe pushing themselves into the middle of the Western Conference playoffs, which would mean that you'd be hoping to win 50 games or so, which that's pretty tough, but perhaps the Suns would just view Chris Paul as the guy who can get him there. We, of course, saw how good he still was against Houston and this whole previous season for OKC. There's, of course, questions with Chris Paul between how much longer can he be this good, can he stay healthy, all that stuff. But if you look at the impact that Rubio made for Phoenix, it made Devin Booker way more efficient. It took some of the pressure off of him as a ball handler. Rubio helped him out defensively as well. You'd think that Chris Paul could make that same impact, but on a larger scale. So if you want to be optimistic, you can take that team that was 8-0 in the bubble, and you can apply Chris Paul to that team, and you can be like, oh, wow, we might really have something. Now, you could think that that bubble was a fluke. You could think that CP just can't do it for much longer. He's not going to be healthy, that sort of thing. The other question would be, well, we'll get to the players. I mentioned Oubre earlier, but the other thing is draft picks. I mean, OKC's got $1 million over the next few years, but would they want more picks from the Suns? Would the Suns give up a first when Chris Paul is, however old he is at the moment, 35, I think he is? It's a little dicey. The one thing I could picture is maybe, would the Suns give up the 10th pick this year, and then maybe the Thunder give them the 25th pick, which belongs to the Nuggets? I guess that could be a possibility. I really don't think the Suns would want to give up a pick down the road, given how old Chris Paul is. Now, one thing about this, though, is because the Suns are underneath the cap, you don't have to match salary like that. I mean, Chris Paul makes $41 million, but if I do the trade on trade machine websites, I can just do Oubre's $14 million for Chris Paul, and the trade works. Although, if you're going to try that out yourself, make sure that the trade machine has the salaries updated for this season. ESPN still thinks it's last year, so for them the move doesn't work, and it saves OKC a whole bunch of cap space. I imagine Oubre would be the guy moving. Now, Phoenix might want to put more people in the move to save themselves some money. Even if they don't have to match Chris Paul's salary, it might be beneficial for them to get as close to his money as possible, just so they could have some money for free agency or whatever. Now, we don't know Chris Paul's market, so there's a chance that Oubre would be the best player that you're going to acquire. I don't really think it's possible for this to happen without Oubre. The other guy who it's kind of interesting is Rubio, just because it's like, do you want to keep Rubio when you now have Chris Paul? I mean, Rubio would be a very overqualified backup point guard. Could he play off the ball? I mean, we saw that sometimes with Utah, and it wasn't awesome, we can say. Chris Paul can certainly play off the ball, but it's like, do you want to trade for him and then have possessions where he's watching Rubio do something? I don't know about that one. So maybe Rubio would be in the move just for the sake of what else are we going to do with this guy. But I do think OKC would definitely want Oubre, and that would be pretty good. I mean, you're talking about Shea, Oubre, whole bunch of picks, maybe one more pick in this move, maybe 2 picks in this move if Phoenix wants to get wild enough. So we'll have to see. Now, whether this move specifically happens or not, it shows that Phoenix wants to do something. I will give myself a little bit of credit. They were one of my teams where I was like, I expect them to try to make some sort of a win now move. I didn't know it could be potentially this drastic, trading for 35-year-old Chris Paul and maybe having to move 25-year-old Kelly Oubre to do it, but that's the NBA sometimes. I mean, Devin Booker is in his mid-20s now, and I mean, I think we're a decent ways away from Devin Booker wants to be traded being a thing, but that type of thing can sometimes happen before you know it, and if you gotta get a guy like Chris Paul to show that you're serious about wanting to win, then perhaps you do it. Especially because, and again, this is assuming Oubre is moving. I don't think DeAndre Ayton's moving. I don't I mean, maybe Rubio could be moving. He's an okay enough player. I just don't know if OKC would be really going nuts about getting Ricky Rubio. So where the hell was I? Oh, Phoenix might not view Oubre as essential moving forward because Cam Johnson's good. Mikal Bridges, you could argue, is on pace to being one of the best wing defenders and best role player 3-and-D guys in the league. And Oubre's contract is up after next season, which starts in like a month. So maybe they just would view Oubre as the guy who's got to go. And if that was the case, then trading him for Chris Paul would not be the worst thing you could do with it. Now, let's say this ends up falling through for whatever reason, I don't know. Then I think this shows that Phoenix could be in line for somebody else. Oladipo, Buddy Hield, if it comes to that, I don't know. They could be players in free agency still if they don't end up making this trade. I mean, this would secure most of their cap space, or actually I think all of it. Even if Oubre was in the move, again, they don't have to match salary because they're under the cap. So putting Rubio in there would give them some more space if they wanted to do whatever, even if it just makes it easier to re-sign Aaron Baines or Dario Saric or whatever. I feel like I went off on a tangent there. Again, I feel like Phoenix, if this doesn't happen, something else is going to happen with them, or we're going to see news about them trying something. And then again, for OKC, I mean, you think about other teams that we've thought about for Chris Paul, one of which is the Knicks. Do the Knicks have a prospect that is as good as Kelly Oubre right now? I think it's fair to say RJ Barrett could be better than Oubre, but I don't think the Knicks are going to move him. So, from OKC's perspective, it would be like, yeah, we'll take the Phoenix offer. I don't remember all the other teams that were in Chris Paul rumors. I mean, were the Bucks ever linked to Chris Paul, or were we just talking about it because we had nothing else to talk about? Regardless, the Bucks don't have an asset as good as Kelly Oubre. I mean, I guess if the Bulls went crazy and offered you Lauri Markkanen, I think that would be a better asset than Oubre, but I don't think we really expect that one to happen. Could taking on Horford's money and Philly giving you a whole bunch of picks be better than Oubre? I would say no. I do like Oubre quite a bit. I recognize that sometimes his three-point shooting as well as his defense are a little inconsistent, but I think he's good. I think he can be good. I think he already is good, and he can get a little better. So yeah, I think for the sake of Chris Paul potentially being in Phoenix, there's some risk to it because of his age and injury stuff, but if you're the Suns, this might be the win-now move that you really like. They might not also view Oubre as really part of the core moving forward because they got some other decent wings, and they don't have to match money to get CP because the Suns are underneath the cap. And again, if this move doesn't happen, it at least shows that, I mean, clearly there's Chris Paul trade talks happening, and obviously Phoenix would like to make some sort of a move. So I think this is a cool sign for what is going to be a pretty hectic November for the NBA and players moving around, and the draft is in the middle of all this too. It's going to be pretty nuts, and I guess this is the official beginning to the madness.